Can you see?
To cope.
I'm not making a bad, but see my finger there?
Yeah.
That's actually a bit of nail varnish. I was playing the other day and I broke a nail. And for a guy, that's like, it's such a girly thing, but breaking a nail ruins my day because I can't play at all then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right.
So I got some hard nail varnish and put that on. That's the remains of it.
Jimmy, you've just given your finger to all of our viewers there.
Yeah, I do admit it. I do it metaphorically. I'm there doing it for real. No. So.
So it is Thursday, the 14th of January. It's 9:30ish, and you're watching Broadsheet on the telly. And we're back. And joining us tonight on the show, I'll start with our regulars that we haven't been around for a few weeks. Are we still regulars? Our Lady in Crumlin, Our Lady of Crumlin, not to be confused with a better known establishment. Vanessa Foran. How are you, Vanessa?
Hi Neil, hi Jimmy, and our new guest Sharon. Hi everyone, and Happy New Year, viewers.
Wow, Happy New Year, yeah, of course.
It's my job to introduce everyone, Vanessa. It's my job. Don't be trying to steal my turf. Our man over the north side, the only man over the north side with a clean beard, he was telling us before we went live. Jimmy Smith, how are you, Jimmy?
I'm fine, thank you, Neil, and yourself?
Not too bad.
I'm just looking at your own tonsorials there. Your beard is just got specked with grey. I like that. It's very George Clooney. I've gone the full grey, you see.
Now you see, that's how you do it. That's how you sputter somebody up. George Clooney. I'll take that. That's the end of the show now. We can go home now. And we're joined tonight by a very special guest. Sharon, I didn't have the courtesy to ask you where you're dialing in from, but Sharon Lawless, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm in Cherrenure at the moment.
Sharon is the...
Oh, my neighbour.
I know. I was thinking that, yeah.
She's
well, you're very welcome. Sharon, of course, is the producer of the book. Dublin 6 or 6W?
6W. Yeah, it's not the posh side.
The posh, not the posh side. No. Not the posh. Sorry about that. Sharon is the producer of the book Adoption Stories, and Sharon's going to be sharing some.
That's not me now, lads. I can tell you now.
Doing tonight,
Neil. Your Wi-Fi is after going a bit.
Oh, that's it. They're on to me again tonight. They're on to me again.
The Illuminati, my friend. I'm telling you.
That's it. Shouldn't have been tweeting those tweets. So it's been a lot has changed in the last month. God, there we were a month ago. Not a bother on us. We thought case numbers of 50, 60, 100 odd, 200 odd. We thought they were of grave concern, and now we're in a very, very, very different position only a few weeks later. But maybe we'll save the regular COVID chat for a bit later, because the news this week has been focused somewhere else, a story that's been going on for quite some time. So Sharon, if I could perhaps jump to you and shine the spotlight on your good self.
Yeah.
Maybe from your own perspective, given this is something, it's been close to you for quite some time, how's it been for you? What are you observing this week on the whole, on the mother and baby report?
Well, I think it had gone on for so long. I mean, it was supposed to be over, a few years ago. It's gone on for 5 years. And from the very beginning, there were questions from the community about what it was actually going to achieve, because the terms of reference were so narrow. It only was investigating 18 institutions out of well over 100. And it left out, for me, the biggest flaw has been that it left out St. Patrick's Guild, which was the biggest adoption agency at the time. And quite apart from the fact that they were involved in illegal adoption, they were also involved in regular adoption. So they had thousands and thousands and thousands of adoptions that went through, and they weren't part of the investigation. And then it was uncovered in 2018 that they had facilitated a whole load of illegal adoptions. And it's something that I'd actually covered myself in Adoption Stories on TV, where we had found that evidence that they had facilitated a whole load of illegal adoptions. But the government announced it, and the government knew for years as well, but they announced it, and there was consternation. And even at that stage, the Commission of Investigation didn't include St. Patrick's Guild. So it was always going to be flawed. It was always going to be not
Sharon has
Sharon.
dropped there, has she?
Oh.
It's just while Sharon tries to log in again there, St. Patrick's Guild, that was in the Stephen's Green area, wasn't it? Or Bagot Street area?
I'm not sure where it was actually myself.
Well, I'll have a Google there.
I might have to Google that in a moment.
I'm doing it there now, lads.
No, do you see?
Well, we wait there for Sharon to come back in.
But they might have the 6W address, but they don't have the decent Wi-Fi. I'm just saying.
Vanessa, what was your thoughts? What was your take on it? We've lost Sharon there.
Do you know, I suppose, having been on the outskirts of this story, particularly with the two babies for quite some time, I never trusted this commission anyway. I never trusted it. And I'm looking at the document and I have the copy downloaded and I kind of went to pick it up and look at it and then I realized, do you know what, I'm not giving this a minute of my time. And that's not meant to offend any survivor or anyone that's relying on it for information or to find their story said and heard. Because it's completely disingenuous. It was, no, I don't believe anyone believed it was going to deliver the story they wanted, the truth they wanted. I don't believe anyone really knew that all their stories would be documented into it, because I can see our friend Kevin there checking in, right, with us. I don't even believe Kevin would have believed all the evidence was going to be listed and documented and the stories from start to finish were going to be heard. So from that point of view, there's nothing in it. There's nothing in it for me. Where I'm taking my anger and my angst and my energy, and I think it's better served that way, definitely for all our sakes, is it's the way sort of Micheál Martin and Roderick O'Gorman are managing it, and Leo Varadkar, and the whole sort of the shop front of our government, right? Ultimately, this is our current government, but they take over from the previous one, and the previous one, so they carry all that responsibility. And here's the thing, folks, right? When and I posted this actually probably on the sheet during the week, but you know, this was the state. This was not society. This was not anything. It wasn't the way it was at the time we're passing the book. This was the state. It was the schools. It was the county boards that set up these homes. It was the local health boards. It was the hospitals. Do you know what I mean? These were state apparatuses. They paid these people to provide these services. And so it is entirely 100%, as far as I'm concerned, the state. You don't get to say that was the way it was at the time.
No, you used the word disingenuous just a little while, and I will bow to your greater erudition on this, and presumably Kevin's and certainly Sharon's. But the narrative from Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael that we're all complicit, and I'm finding that from friends of mine. There's arguments on various social media now, guys weighing in, kind of Fine Gael apologists almost, trying to say that we were not all complicit. It was very clearly there were certain, it was a government problem, it was a church problem, it was certain bodies, like you said, various apparatuses. Is that a word actually? Is it apparati?
No, well, I'm getting very attached to that word at the moment, apparatus. I have a easy laugh, like, but it's the thing. The ultimately, it was the state. They don't get to blame society. They don't get to blame a fucking crowd that, you know.
I mean, there's stuff like
some fairy in the sky.
Not one case went to the DPP ever. I mean, it's amazing. It really is amazing.
I don't believe I'm not letting them away with that. And there's on a personal level now as well, right? Is Micheál is what he's 5 or 6 years older than I am. We're from the same constituency. He went, you know, we didn't go to the same schools, but we would have gone to the same discos and nightclubs and stuff growing up, right?
I can't imagine that somehow.
Right.
I always thought you were 31. That's what you told us, Vanessa.
Well, I tell you, he did a lot better than I did. Come here. Sorry.
Sharon, and welcome to the show, Kevin Higgins. Just before we go chat to Kevin, Sharon is back with us. We lost you there, Sharon.
Yeah, sorry about that. My wireless went down, and then it took about 5 minutes to get back up again.
This is the Dublin 6W levy.
Yeah.
But let me finish my rant here about Micheál Martin in particular, right? And Bessborough is in our constituency, right? What hurts me the most actually is that he knows girls that were sent there. I was at school with girls that were sent there. And he knows fellas who had children born in there. And his entire face, his entire presence, how he's presented all this and how he's faced it all in the last 48 hours gives no demonstration that any of that bothers him. I can't even talk about Anne Lovett without starting to cry. And for me, that's not the leader I want. Now, I know I don't have a choice in it, but he's not a lead. There is no sense of responsibility or feeling I should have done something or I should have known. And that's why you have this hands-off approach. Oh, it was everybody else, but what could you do? And it reminds me of my conversation with him at Dublin Castle. Do you remember when he got snotty about Broadsheet and about putting up the video of the money in the bank account, the wife's bank account? And we were all having this great day at Dublin Castle with the count and, with the repeal campaign. And everyone was having the chat because I'm the only non-political person there, and all having the crowd. And we were talking about the Ardèche. And about how Fianna Fáil's Ardèche voted like 70% to support the no side of the campaign, the repeal campaign. And I remember we were chatting about this and he was whispering and going, yeah, but sure, what they did? No, they brought in the buses and he brought in, because we have an understanding of how delegate votes work, right? And you know how they did this. We were having a bit of chat and a bit of crack, and suddenly he went into the dark and said, oh, but sure, didn't you put up that video about me? With the Mark Hagney, another Cork fella caught him, with the wife.
That's right.
That's right. And he went from such a great day. And all the politics crowd were thrilled to be hanging out and having the crack. But there was just this, and I got that feeling from him for the last 2-3 days. They don't give a shit.
No.
As long as it doesn't affect their poll numbers. This is not, and actually, I don't even think they're worried about the money, about how they may have to pay out, or how they're going to have to deal with encountering a survivor on the street or their family. I don't even think it's that. I think they're worried about their poll numbers, or their image on, or how it's going to come across on Clare Byrne, or that's what I think. There's just, and it goes back to what we've been building up all through September, October, November. These people are just not amongst us at all.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we could go back to yourself, Sharon. Sorry, the internet failed us mid sentence. Vanessa likes to go down rant. But if we could pick up where we'd left off. Sorry.
Yeah, well, even just picking up on what Vanessa's saying there, I mean, there definitely is that tone in the report. It is, it's an other, to use one of these terms now, it's an othering. It's like, to me, having worked with people in the adoption community for the past 10 or 11 years, I don't see them as victims or survivors, or to me, they're very normal people. They are our cousins, our aunties, our uncles, our classmates, our colleagues. And the way the whole thing has been framed is as if this happened, in the dark ages, that the people that they're talking about, particularly the mothers, are uneducated, they're hiding, they're living in poverty. Now, some of them are, but it's almost like this is a margin of society, and God help them, and sure, look, it's terrible, and we'll give them a few bob and it'll be okay. Instead of actually normalizing the whole thing and saying, no, this is a reality. This did happen in the past, but the effects of it are very much today. And I think that the whole question of redress and compensation, the way they have that framed is that, you would be entitled to compensation if you were longer than 6 months in a mother and baby home. But you're not entitled to it if you were there after 1973, because that's when, you know, the unmarried mother's allowance came in. So already it's like they're narrowing, there were narrow terms of reference anyway, but they're narrowing it down even further. So that then you have the question, well, I was, you know, 3 months in a mother and baby home, but the trauma that I experienced has lasted with me, and I now have, I have never been able to keep a job down. And, you know, it's like, it's almost like proving that you're, you know, worthy of compensation, or that you're worthy of an apology, instead of actually saying, no, we actually need to respect these people, instead of kind of looking down on them. And I just feel the whole terminology and tone of the report was, well, we are judging these people, and the we are the judges, politicians, all of that, as if they're these ghosts out there somewhere, and not people we all know who actually have ongoing issues with either trauma that they experienced or trying to get their birth information, which really is the biggest hurdle. And I'm not sure that that is going to be dealt with. I mean, if people could find out who their mother is and what their original name was, I mean, that would shortcut an awful lot of the issues that adopted people and natural parents have. And that's been put on the long finger all the time. You know, I just get the sense that it still wasn't taken that seriously. You know, it didn't decide, right, we know what the issues are here, because God knows the adoption community has been telling us for long enough. And there shouldn't have been any surprises or shocks to any of the politicians there, because a lot of them are parts of dynasties, and their, you know, uncles or fathers or grandfathers were all aware of what was going on in mother and baby homes and other institutions while they were in power. So I don't see how any of this could be shocking to them. And certainly in recent years, most politicians have been approached by members of the adoption community to bring their issues into the Dáil, and some of them have done so, and some of them have been very supportive. So what came out in the report shouldn't be shocking. What has yet to come out would probably be more shocking. But I think the tone and the way this is spoken about and the way people are dealt with really needs to change. They really need to up their game. To me, just reading what's in the report, there are an awful lot of inaccuracies. People have said to me, one guy in particular gave his testimony, and he said, look, really what I need is counselling. Afterwards, this woman came up to him and said, okay, well, here's a number you can ring for counselling. You know, we've organised that for you now, but you'll be going back to the end of the queue. You needn't think you're going to get any special treatment. So this man had gone in, you know, late 50s, had gone in, given his testimony, very harrowing. And that was the attitude when he came out, you know, don't think you're anything special. You know, so it really needs to change.
They were treated like as if they're on a trolley in an A&E, just.
Yeah, but it's like it's nothing to do with us, you know. It's those people out there somewhere, you know, who we can't relate to, and they're not.
No, you know? No. That's what I can't. I'm not prepared to sort of leave Micheál Martin and all this crew away with. You know, whatever about Leo Varadkar, he does come from a different scene altogether.
Mm.
You know, but it's just the idea that our church was them, was this. And here's another thing now, and I know Kevin's dying to get in and doing right. Here's the other thing here is, and Norma Foley's the Minister for Education. She's employed by a convent. That's her job as a teacher. He was employed by Presentation. So there's influence present. The Catholic Church have their people around the cabinet table, folks.
Yeah. I
don't think that's not influence. It is. And I'm wondering now, Kevin, you might know now, having been a closer watcher of sort of the upper echelons of Westminster and all this, right? But do you think Norma Murphy declares a conflict of interest when this is going around the table?
Norma Foley.
Yeah. No, but she should. She should, because it's influence.
Did what?
It's influence. She didn't get. She's hardly after giving up her job in the presentation in Tralee, is she?
I doubt very much if she's given up the job.
And has Micheál Martin given up his job with Presentation Brothers?
Enda Kenny had a substitute, I think, for 24
30, 32 years, I think, Kevin. I'm not sure.
And was he in a church school?
Was
he principal of a church school?
He came out of, I think, St. Patrick's or wherever it was at the age of 22, and courtesy of his father, the glorious All-Irelandman Henry Kenny, the local parish priest immediately fixed him up with a job. So his only real job in life was beginning the daily prayer in Irish with 5-year-olds. That's his full experience of actual working life.
But just Norma is definitely was Presentation Secondary School Tralee was her employer, and I know Micheál Martin was in in Cork. Now I don't know if he still has that post, but I think Norma's after giving up the post, and she only in the job since February. But there's just two examples now where the church have their people around our cabinet table.
I don't think it matters at all. I think it's far more. I think it's far more substantial than that, because the report that we're all getting very excited about could, with a few moderations in tone and a few nods to the fact that we're in the year now 2021, the report, the thrust of the report and the way in which it chooses to interpret the evidence before it, and then to ignore the rest of the evidence before it, and then simply to ignore what we all know. It might as well have been written in 1921 as 2020 or 21. It's essentially the same. Anybody who thinks that the bond between church and state has somehow been ruptured, you're simply not seeing it. Mm-hmm. It has not been ruptured. And
no.
There is almost a self-perpetuating elite within the civil service, and it's quite ingrained, and it's trying to get anything done above clerical level, or there used to be a clerical officer. There isn't now. It's like wading through wet cement. There is an immediate resistance to anything at all which upsets the equilibrium of their lives. There is no existing moral sense or compass within the apparatus of the state. There simply isn't. And we're all being distracted. We're all complaining about the tone of the report. Again, this is just another diversion. We spent a week talking about the leaking of the report. Again, a diversion. What needs to be done is quite clear, and what the people who have specialist knowledge and interest in particular areas need to focus on that. People like Maeve O'Rourke have a focus, and the Justins from Madeline Group, from Claire and Catherine O'Donnell, Susan Lohan, whatever those people are concerned essentially with the right to identity, and they're correct. Things like redress, though it's important, is really quite a small part of the story. Redress is something like a pardon, like a Trump pardon. Throw a few bob at it. The late the chap whose name escapes me now was Human Rights Commissioner at the UN. He said the Irish state, their process is always deny, lie, delay, and then throw a few bob at it, as little as possible. And it goes down through layers and layers, like muslin cloth. You're saying that who will qualify, who will not qualify. And 10, 15 years ago, some people who are alive who weren't deemed to qualify will eventually be getting a decision from the High Court saying that they do, possibly on their deathbed. But, nothing has really changed. For me, I have a focus. I know what I want to do. I know I can't fight all of the battles. I know the precise aspect of this whole thing that I need to continue whatever energies I have left. And that's what I'm going to focus on, and that's what I'm doing. But there are other aspects. There are people who should focus on getting the best possible redress system. There are those who should focus on the issue of essentially a right to identity, which if you took a case on the right to identity to the Irish courts now, you would win. Absolutely. And we would tear up the ridiculous 1987 Status of Children Act, for which Mary Harney got kudos, but which is in fact a piece of trash. It did not in fact liberate so-called illegitimate children. It in fact actually made them second-class citizens by denying them the right to even seek a paternity suit if they were adopted, because they were no longer regarded as being the child of their own mother. So, I mean, you know what I'm doing. I'm going to continue that. I can't see us getting anywhere without dragging the bastards into court, but so be it. We really shouldn't be talking about the peripheries of these things.
Can I just ask you, Kevin, sorry, with the publishing of the report this week, do you think that will make your cause any easier, harder, or no difference whatsoever?
Very little difference, in that it may inform a larger number of people than were perhaps informed before. It will cause the degree of shock, horror among a number of people, and they'll all feel terribly sad. They may light a candle or two. But again, it was a distraction, because all we heard was the report, the leaking of the report. That for me should not have been the focus of this week. I know what the focus should be for me, and I know how fundamental it is to the whole shooting match. Because if you follow the law, and if the law is followed, and 5 years late after those bodies were actually discovered, an inquest is properly held, a proper forensic inquest, you will then be able to establish the damage, the starvation of those children. You will be able to detect the signs of neglect, and you will be able to establish liability and culpability. And I do not mean in financial terms. I mean that you will be able to establish the culpability of the religious order and the state which allowed them to do that. And that is the fundamental, because if you allow things to continue, no one is to blame. This Burials Act is to carry out an exhumation without a single inquest. Nobody will be to blame, and we will have the movement from one mass grave to another with some fucking bishop wagging his fucking chasuble around and with the usual cant. And that, as I've said before, in my diminishing life and health, will happen, Neil, over my dead body.
Sharon, from Kevin's pacing, I mean, I think it's probably fair to say we're seeing such an emotional outpouring from Irish people this week. And I think what Kevin is sharing with us there presents a very grim view that I don't think a lot of people who haven't been following the story will be aware of. A lot of people are saying that this is a vindication, and this is perhaps a milestone that marks, a journey toward the end of the story. What's your take? Would you share that similar anger that Kevin is sharing with us, or
Yeah, no, I would, and I just have an issue with the way it's all being presented to the public and the shock and horror that allegedly, the people have when these stories have been out there already. The build up to it. It's all about the way things are presented. And Kevin is right. It's kind of like this was presented as like the big hope. This was going to solve everything, and in fact, it has solved nothing. If anything, it has solidified the attitude towards so-called survivors, which I just think that has the wrong connotations. But yeah, I mean, you know, there is shock horror of what went on. I do think there's more to come out. I do think that, like any piece of news, like repeal the seal, like Tuam when it broke, first of all, Tuam, I suppose, is the exception, that there still is shock and horror over what happened there, and the fact that still nothing has really progressed in what needs to happen. But yeah, I think that society are kind of shock horror, but there's still a total lack of understanding. You know, I think that the general public still don't fully understand the issues that adopted people face. I think the identity issue is a huge one. I think all campaigners in adoption have been campaigning for access to birth information. That has been an ongoing thing, and that's the Holy Grail. And it's been pushed back so many times because of the 1998 case, the IoT and B case. So that's been used all the time. But even if you read that case, it was like back and forth, you know, different opinions about what the outcome should have been. I mean, basically the outcome was said to have been that the mother's right to privacy superseded the child's right to an identity, and that's been the answer every time that it's come up. So if Kevin reckons that if a case was brought now, it would be one that would be an incredible step forward, but because that seems to be the root of the problem in those terms. In terms of the infant deaths and the fact that they found that there could have been 9,000 babies who died from, you know, the 18 institutions that they investigated. I mean, that's horrific. I think Kevin could probably speak better on that than I could because he's more experienced in that area. But yeah, there is shock horror, but you know, it's like anything, like they know it's going to go away. They know nothing is going to happen quickly. Some things can, memorials, those kind of things can happen quickly. But at the end of the day, this is affecting people's lives on a daily basis. You know,
there's a you mentioned repeal the seal there, for instance, and these kind of catchphrase, social media, judgment by social media and all this stuff. People like Terry Prone today.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus!
I'm sorry. Okay, but I came across an email, and she's saying you will find no mass grave, no evidence that children were ever buried, and local police force casting their eyes up to heaven, saying, "Yeah, a few bones were found, but this was an area where famine victims were buried in the 84, presumably true." So move on, please. Now, when you have public relations people altering the narrative like this, who is it up to? Whose responsibility is to police this and say, "Look, you can't." I'm calling her out now today, right now. I mean, that's appalling. That is an appalling email.
But we had a great show literally in the week after that letter was issued. Kevin circulated. It was Kevin. It was you that broke the story, was it, Kevin? And I remember Peter Mulroy was on the show.
I put that email into the public domain in October, I think, 2014. Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's not old. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, but the boys were on the show, and I remember what would you say? I said, "Tell you what I'd say to them. So. I always answer that with people, you know, when there's something about Terry Prone and the Bonds girls. So, and even their statement yesterday had Terry Prone all over them. Maybe she didn't write it. I have a faith. She's obviously isolating. I just said, reply to the statement. So that is one of the lines in that letter, replying to this French director or producer.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
A cheeky bitch.
Look, at the time, Jimmy, that she released that email, or that she sent that email to Saskia Weber, Terry clients, personal clients within the communications clinic, I do not mean the company, I mean among the clients she was handling personally. And I know this because I've seen the damn emails between them, and a lot of other people have seen the emails to them, including at a tribunal. The Garda commissioner was her client.
Yes.
Minister for Children, Health and Later Children, James
You
Ryan,
see?
was her client.
Look at this. See?
Francis Fitzgerald, Minister for Children and later Minister for Justice, was her client, and the Bon Secours nuns were her clients.
Well, there's the full
I found Terry.
rogues gallery.
I found her. I found her.
Dealing with them personally.
Lisa.
Well, there's the full rogues gallery there, and it's that is shocking. And again, Vanessa was talking earlier on about the government, the way they're Fine Gael and Fine about Micheál, the way he's discussed it, with the way they're handling this kind of laissez-faire, kind of lack of empathy thing that's going on. It's very interesting. I saw your man Hancock during the week, the British secretary, what is he, the Minister for Health.
Yeah.
And Piers Morgan, this is a sentence I thought I'd never say, but Piers Morgan was great. He was asking him about the lunches, and Marcus Ratchford is the guy that made them give the free lunches to kids, and he'd actually voted against it. So he's on
Marcus
top.
Ratchford is the one that took the milk away. Milk snatcher.
Marcus Ratchford is the guy who's been
Oh yeah, Ratchford.
getting
Yeah,
it
he's the
back
footballer.
into the schools.
Oh, Thatcher. No, let's not go back to Thatcher. But anyway, he's saying. So
sorry,
he's
Ratchford. I beg your pardon. Sorry.
so Piers Morgan is saying to him, yes. So how do you feel now? You voted against this, and now they're giving the kids free. And he's going, I'm very glad. He says, no, you're not answering the question. And he just would not answer the question. It's like these school guys are schooled in being unempathetic and avoiding. You know, it is very transparent now, I think. And when you have people like Terry Prone, who is, you know, in fairness, very good at her job. If I had someone to do a PR job, I'd probably want to get someone like her.
Is she very good at her job?
Well, allegedly.
I've been told by senior.
Allegedly.
Look
Can
at
I-
the list of the past few years. What a wonderful political career James Connolly had.
Well, no, that was
Bollocks he made of everything.
absolutely.
What
And we thought with James Riley, we thought that, you know, a doctor being the head of the
P. Flynn didn't he learn how to handle himself on TV?
But did she look after P. Flynn?
Oh, she says
Francis Fitzgerald.
he was her biggest
Well.
success story. She's adamant P. Flynn was her biggest success story until he went on the late and
Wow,
made
that
an
was-
absolute show of himself.
Okay, well, I take that back then. But she's a very well-known PR person.
Well, I have been told actually when it comes to training, media training, she is the best. And I said, Jesus, no, you couldn't go. Jesus, there'd be no go to Terry Prone now. And do you know who said? Well, do you know who the next best person is? Gavin Duffy. And I go,
Oh, here, no, don't, no.
is it any wonder we're here making it up as we go along?
Can anybody remember the name of that unfortunate woman at the turn of the last century, or at the beginning of the last century, who was convinced she was a gifted opera diva?
Yes, Florence Foster Jenkins.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what. Terry Prone is Florence Foster Jenkins in reverse. Florence Jenkins, because she was so bad, and they would try and stifle, but they'd go outside and snigger afterwards. Terry Prone goes with such bombast as politicians over the past 40 years. They think she's absolutely wonderful because she talks bullshit at such
She's
a rate.
convinced them.
She goes outside and sniggers at how much state money they've thrown at her.
Yeah, she's convinced them she's good. So that's the style. Like, because if you look at RTE, actually, all the presentation, the presenter style is the same.
Please don't look at RD, but anyway.
I know, but Sharon is a sort of creative pro. Like, I mean, I wouldn't have a clue. Whereas, do you know what I mean? Like, if you think about it, the tone is the same. It's like listening to a Daniel O'Donnell concert. You know, the key is the same all the way through the tempo.
Yeah.
The only person that has any bit of sort of change in tone is Ronan Collins, because he might be singing to Shawadi Wadi one minute.
Yeah.
Or he might be singing,
I think this must be a record for Broadsheet and the Telly, where within the space of about 60 seconds, you've just slated about 100 people in that. But if I can bring us back for a moment, maybe Sharon and Kevin, to throw this out to you. Again, a particular interest in this and with me is, as I said, about that emotional outpouring that we've seen this week, and a lot of people shocked and catching up on that. And as you say, this will, you know, we've got the seriousness of the pandemic, which is front and center every day in the paper. So this story will inevitably is at risk of disappearing unless people continue the momentum like yourselves. But, you know, to people who are kind of only catching up with the story now, who might feel that there is a, you know, there was a result this week, a positive result. What can people do from your perspective? What do you think people can do to ensure that people are held to account, the government is held to account, and that there is a satisfactory conclusion as best as that can be, you know, for the people involved?
Well, I think there are a number of really, really good campaigners from the adoption community, and they can speak with authority because they themselves are adopted, or their mothers who've gone through the system. But, you know, again, it's this thing of the attitude of, you know, we're dealing with people who haven't a clue. Like, those people are incredibly intelligent. They're well able to stand up and they know the law. You know, they're really good. I think that they just need a good point that Kevin made, that the people who are expert in certain areas need to focus on those areas to follow them through. And certainly a lot of the campaigners I've come across are well able to do that. And they're well versed and they're well trained and they're well qualified. On the other side, if you want to keep the public awareness going, I mean, people are moved by personal stories. You know, there's a reaction to people going on Liveline and sharing their story. And when I started off with making adoption stories, the TV series years ago, I just was shocked because I'm not adopted and we don't have any adoption in our family that I'm aware of. And so when I saw people, you know, when I'd go and I'd meet them, and we would have had the same background, maybe friends in common or whatever. And then they tell me about the difficulty that they had in finding their birth certificate, or the fact that they couldn't find out who their mother was. I mean, before that, I always thought the whole issue with adopted people finding their mother in particular, that the big issue was whether they'd get on or not. I had no idea of what people needed to go through to get to that point. And to me, it was a real, you know, kind of like human rights issue. And ordinary people were carrying this and carrying it for decades, and maybe not feeling that they could talk about it because their family was sick listening to them. So with adoption stories, I just let people tell their own story. It wasn't manipulated. And it was very raw for a lot of people. It was the first time that they told their stories. So there hasn't been a series since 2017, since Virgin took over TV3, but I just got news this evening that they're going to start repeating them. I mean, they've repeated them ad nauseum over the years anyway, but I think this is a time when there's actually, you know, a call out for personal stories. And I think that's what people relate to. I've seen a lot of response on social media saying, you know, we need to let these people tell their stories. We need to hear the stories. We need to assure them that they're okay. And I think that's what it comes down to, that when you realize this is actually on a very human level, and there, but for the grace of God go I, that it will be kept in the news to some degree, or there will be an interest in doing something about it. Because certainly I couldn't believe it as a normal citizen, that this is the way people were being treated, and the things that were being said to them about, you know, not being entitled to this information. So why would you want it? And why, you know, sure, you'll just go up and knock on their door and ruin their lives, you know. And even, you know, with people on a search, once they said that they were adopted, it was like the shutters came down. If they were able to prove that they were entitled to information, maybe if they'd been illegally adopted and everybody involved was dead or whatever, the doors opened and they were welcomed in, you know, with open arms. Or people who discovered that they'd been adopted, you know, late in life, that they never realized that they'd been adopted. Suddenly they were a second-class citizen. You know, they didn't have the same entitlements that they had before they realized that this was, you know, how they had come about.
Sorry, Sharon, that kind of, if you think about it, that kind of sounds like an operating policy that they planned and embedded in from, say, the 60s, 50s or 60s on how to deal with these inquiries. Or look, if it ever happens, we'll use this, we'll train them in to do this. And, even though all the records eventually went from the health boards to the HSE, now to TUSLA.
Yeah,
I mean, the whole thing is.
Yeah, but I think that there was
It's
never.
all state. Don't let them fool you into thinking it was us. It was society. It was the way it was. It was family were pressured, and this was the state.
This
no
was
mistake
the
about
state.
that, folks.
And the thing is, from what I've been looking at in the illegal adoption side of things, I mean, I'm working on a documentary about that, and it's taken years to get off the ground, because I went to RTE in 2011 with it. I came across it as part of my research into the series, and I thought, no, these stories need like an hour and a half to tell them, because there's so much involved. And I went to RTE and I said, like, you won't believe this, private nursing homes, networks of, you know, doctors, midwives, politicians, judges, the whole thing. And I was told, no, that didn't happen. And I said, no, it did. And they said, no, they were all the American babies. Mike Malott did all that on prime time. And I said, no, that's completely separate, completely different setup. I'm talking about here. And I have people here. I have a mother whose son was taken, was never legally adopted, and she's been looking for him for 50 years. And I have a woman who's in her 50s who only discovered at the age of 48 that she had been handed over to her parents and there's no record of her birth. And they just wouldn't believe me. And then, of course, in 2018, it all came out about St. Patrick's Guild. But in doing all of that, I mean, the stuff that's on the files there, you know, the state and individual members of political parties and household names over the years, they're all in there. And money changed hands. I mean, I've seen receipts, you know, I've seen the money trail. And it was all facilitated by the government. I mean, at one point, I have a letter from Brian Lenihan Sr. when he was Minister for Justice, where one illegal adoption had taken place. You know, the child was basically kidnapped. And he said, well, the only thing I can advise you, now you're in South Africa, is to adopt him in South Africa. And sure, that's what's happened in other cases. So straight away, you know, acknowledging that the child was taken out of the country and acknowledging that it had happened before. And that was the Minister for Justice at the time.
They had a code. They had a code to manage these inquiries.
Oh, yeah.
And there was no making it up as they go along. They had a code and a practice, and they followed it. And the fact that they did follow it shows how that there was most definitely an agreed practice. Is why they managed to keep it secret for so long.
Yeah, but also there was an awful lot of money involved.
Oh gosh, yeah. But you are talking about an organization, right?
Yeah.
That is criminally corrupt. They took money. Kevin, actually, he's hopped off there, but I'm sure he'll come back in. They have receipts of parents paying money for the board. I'm just going to say the boarding of a daughter to have her baby.
That's right.
Paying them, and then doing the nuns doing the poor mouths and trying to scrounge more money out of them, and then getting money from the county council through a grant system. Now, there may not have been such rules for managing grants back in the day, but you guys will have got grants. You know how the legal requirements and the conniptions and the sort of the swearing and the promising you have to do to get something from the state by way of a grant. So they were getting paid for this.
Yeah, but they were getting
money everywhere.
None of
it was declared. None of it.
But you're even in St. Patrick's Guild, you know, which was the biggest adoption agency and left out of this report purposely, even though they didn't have a mother and baby home, they were the ones who handled the most adoptions. And they had a system where the girl, if her baby was being adopted through St. Patrick's Guild, they kind of promoted themselves as having good quality babies because because they came from good girls. So they'd have this whole background story made up about the girl, that she was studying to be a doctor, and so was her boyfriend. So that to adoptive parents, they're going, okay, these are really, you know, these kids are coming from quality backgrounds. But the girl, when she would decide that was the agency will probably decided for her, she would have to pay either £160 straight off to St. Patrick's Guild for facilitating the adoption, or she could pay it weekly. And I have receipts of, the payments that were made. And then where one girl wrote to the nun to say, I can only pay you like 2 shillings this week because instead of 3, because I needed to buy some Christmas presents. And, for my family. And if I don't buy Christmas presents, they'll wonder why. And the answer she got back was, should you not be thinking of your poor child instead of buying frivolous?
And they'd already sent the child off.
That was the child
on a golden handshake anyway.
Yeah, but that particular child was the one who was taken.
That's extortion, by the way. That qualifies as extortion. And under current money laundering legislation, boys and girls, you'd be pretty bumped.
Yeah, but I mean, and they'd been given £500 by the parents, the adopting parents, who took them to South Africa.
White slavery.
£500.
It's child trafficking. What the hell? Seriously.
Child trafficking. That's what it was. Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
But there are people now in their 50s, 60s, 70s only discovering maybe when their adoptive parents pass away and they start going through paperwork, or some helpful family member at the funeral says, you were adopted, and that's how they find out. And then it goes back to maybe, a local priest, a local doctor, whatever. This was an established network that was going on. And I reckon that the reason why they left St. Patrick's Guild out of it was because it was so well known what St. Patrick's Guild was up to. Because funnily enough, the kind of announcement that they found all these, illegal adoption files when St. Patrick's Guild handed everything over to TUSLA came about 3 weeks before a High Court case between a woman called Tressa Reeves, whose son had been taken from her. And she was the woman that I had found. She was in Adoption Stories. She had her child in a private nursing home, signed all the consent forms in one day, went back to England after a few days. She saw him being taken off. And then when she went inquiring about him, she was told she must have imagined having given birth because there was no record of her giving birth. And it was because he was handed over. He never knew he was adopted. So at 53 years of age, he's contacted by a social worker to say, listen, by the way, those people you grew up with weren't actually your parents. You were illegally adopted, and your mother lives over in England, and she's been trying to contact you for the past 30 odd years, and she's ready to meet you. And by the way, here's an interview that she's doing on a television program that's coming up. You might want to have a look at. Now, they were taking a case, the two of them were taking a case against St. Patrick's Guild and the Adoption Authority and the state, the Irish state. Now it was settled, and then St. Patrick's Guild went into liquidation.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah, because there are loads of cases pending. But I mean, Francis Fitzgerald knew about this. Charlie Flanagan knew about it. Everybody.
So were they indemnified, I wonder? By the state?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, ultimately, you can actually prove that some authority somewhere knew. So there's a liability they can travel over.
Yeah.
All right. Do you know what? The whole thing is rotten. I mean, if you think about this commission, the report itself, the state paid for that. And they know it's full of shite. They know it's not complete. Let's just call it complete. I'm not going to say everything in it is a lie, but we know it is not complete.
But we knew it wasn't going to be complete.
Yeah, no, I knew that. But there was nothing Simone ever started that she finished properly anyway. If she couldn't get the fucking creches open, Jesus, like talking about childcare, like Jesus tonight. Sorry, they knew it was never going to be. They knew it was always going to be half-arsed. And then there's the date was 90 at the time. Would you go piss off? Own up to it, folks. Own up to it. This is our history. Germany did it.
Hold on, you're going to stop the Angelus next now, Vanessa. Jesus.
Vanessa, I think lockdown's getting to you, Vanessa.
Do you know what? It is. I tell you, it is. I had to do my own nails this evening.
Oh, that's inhuman. That's
I know.
What's your nail again there, Jimmy?
Is it?
Sharon, before we move on to another topic, do you want to the book Adoption Stories? Do you have a copy of it there, just so people can? There you go.
Yeah.
Available in all good bookshops when they reopen, but it's available online, I presume.
Actually not. Yeah, no, I got to put up a link to it. It's available on Amazon, and I self-published it, which I'll never do again. The series Adoption Stories hopefully will be repeated on the Player, the Virgin Player, and on Virgin Media One. But the book is great because, again, it's just people telling their own stories unfettered. So yeah, the book, I'll post a link to Amazon, yeah, hopefully it sells out.
Hopefully
so. I think Kevin is lost in the ether there somewhere. He's probably just so disgusted at your nail, Jimmy, probably.
I'm just thinking, I don't know if you know, RT finally published their 2019 accounts today, or is it yeah, they came out. Obviously the board signed them off last night, or the last day or so. And it occurred to me, you mentioned Joe Duffy earlier on, and like all this is content for them. It's free content for them.
Yeah.
RTE, and they were part of the whole going along with it for for decades and decades. And their own journalists and news people never took the stories. And I'm thinking there about the free content, on Joe Duffy and all the other news items. And then I'm also thinking then about how COVID has literally gave RT every piece of content.
Piece of content they got, and then they messed that up too.
A few matches there in November and December, and I bet you they're still going to fucking lose money.
Well, I don't know if I was saying it at the very beginning when I cut myself off, or whether I said it since, but RTE over the years, when I've gone to them with different stories, and really kind of expose kind of things, they maintained there was no interest in adoption, no. And then when I went to them with illegal adoption, they said, no, it's a bit heavy. So,
Jesus.
they're going to be all over it now.
But interestingly now, their annual report. Now, remember, folks, this is 2019. This is pre-COVID was invented, right? They're actually calling the report is called "Your Public Media." You're not the national broadcaster anymore. They are presenting themselves as your public media. So, in other words, there's kind of a spin there to try and bring them into everything from publishing to search engines to sort of streaming services.
Well, they're failing at that with the Player anyway, but
yeah.
Well, they're pushing that, but again, it's all meaningless. It's well over a year. It's all stuff that happened in 2019. Like, we want to know what happened to them last year. We want to know, is it worth, why are they paying fucking your man another 200 grand a year on top of his pension to fucking come back? In
fairness, I watched Tommy Tiernan the other day. It was brilliant. It was really
that's a great show, isn't it?
It was brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. He had
I wonder what he'd make of one of us now if we walked out.
Tommy? Tommy'd be one of us. Don't worry about it. He's a good lad.
Well, he's from Meath,
He's a Navan man, my darling, a Navan man. Not just Meath, but Navan.
I don't trust
we went to the same school, me and Tommy and Hector, and we're all different. We're different ages. I'm 8 years older than Tommy. He went with my brother, but we all went to the same school in Navan.
Navan is a real hotbed of creativity, isn't it?
It's a hotbed of creativity, Sharon, because it is a testament to failure, mostly. And ergo, you have to get successful to get out of it to some degree. You know what I mean?
Stop it. As they say about me, they like to get their retaliation in first.
Get the retaliation first. That's right.
I'm still bitter, lads. 32 years. I'm still bitter.
You would be, but yeah. I love Navan. It's a love-hate thing, but it's as flat as our accent is. There's nothing going on there. Ever has been.
Does RT produce the Tommy Tiernan show, or is it what?
Yeah, they
no.
they employed Tommy to do it. I think there is a production company involved. I'm not Sharon might know this, but they employ, but they won't give Tommy a contract. Tommy never knows from year to year. Actually, apparently that was the same with Gay Byrne and people like that years ago.
I think the way they worked, because my partner was working there for a long time as well, and he was saying it wasn't until very recent years that they actually gave him a proper contract.
Tenure, as it were. Yeah, they would leave him hanging out. It's amazing. And it's, again, that place out there, Sharon, as you well know, and we've talked about this many times, and it's getting boring at this point. It's like an oasis of entitlement, really, So even Gay Byrne, who was their poster child, and they wouldn't give him the satisfaction of tenure, you know what I mean? Ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think with Tommy's show, it's made by, is it Power Productions, David Power in Galway?
Oh, is that who? It's David. It is actually. Yes, it is. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. But it looks like they use RT facilities. So.
Oh, it's done in the Studio 4, of course. Yeah, but no, it is. That's right. It's David Power. But no, it's a great show, and they must surely. D-Forbes must see the social media reaction to that. And people going, Tommy's show is great because Tommy's he's a very good guy, and he's a proven entertainer.
He's likable.
Well, he's a proven entertainer. I mean, Ryan Tubridy is not a proven entertainer. No offense to Ryan. He was an investigative journalist, I think, before him in a shiny jumper doing singing in the rain. It's appalling. It's absolutely, it's mind-numbingly disgusting that there are so many great people out there that could be doing that, and to have Ryan Tubridy knows it himself that they're shoehorning him to. But Tommy would be so much better doing a primetime Saturday night show of some sort.
But they do fail. They do what RT gets absolutely right, and what works for them. They don't seem that interested. It just seems to be around a circle of people, and making RT and making it work. Making all their programming around a certain cluster of people.
Well, it's also ultimately that D-Forbes can just go run into Fine Gael and get more money when they fail. You know what I mean? They're not really, their remit is to service Irish arts and culture, and they fail in that, I think.
Well, oddly enough, I'm going through the report, so I'll have it written up probably tomorrow. You'll definitely have it for the weekend anyway, Broadsheet. So keep an eye out for it. Yeah. But what I found quite interesting actually was the quote from the chair. I'm actually going to read it out there from the quote from the chair today. Now, I have a big problem with how their board works, and it has nothing to do with the fact you've no interest in hiring me or putting me on your board, even though I applied several times. And I met all the criteria several times. The chair said today, the current funding model is broken and RT will face a material uncertainty. And the chair said that material uncertainty gives that a qualified audit straight away. But what she says is we'll face a material uncertainty about the capacity to provide the same level of services in the medium term if it is not resolved quickly and definitively. Now, read the first line of that again. The current funding model.
Which is the license and the state funding, right?
Yeah, not advertising, not creating content they can sell, not creating a player that could probably attract a subscription service.
That would work, at least.
None of that. Now, we're told, I'm just out of the top numbers. I go into all the notes. I kind of don't I'm not that bothered about the top numbers because they're deliberately carved out to sell to you. The losses for last year are for 2019 weren't huge, right? They're 7 million, right? But here's the thing about that. How do I know? And I've repeated this, so I know this is boring, but this is important information that people should keep in their minds when they're talking about making state services value for money. Okay, you don't generate money, you get funding. You get funding, plus you charge me a license fee, whether I watch you or not, right? But the point here is they're talking about bringing Sean O'Rourke back. Okay, he was leaving, he's coming back, he acted the bollocks at Golfgate, so they cancelled it, and now he's coming back again.
As well as the Fine Gael whips.
I know you can afford to hire him.
Well, they can't. As well as the Fine Gael whips, they're back as well.
Yeah.
Say that again, Jim.
The Fine Gael whips, they're back after Golfgate as well. Do you know that?
Oh, but sure, they were never going anywhere.
Sticking with RTE and bringing in the Rona, which we haven't
Sorry,
talked
speaking
about
of
tonight.
RTE, Marco, this was an RTE initiative, an RTE Arts initiative, and that put Marco on the what poll is that?
Oh, no, hang on. Now, hang on.
That called?
Are you going to, Vanessa, are you going to be saying something nice about RTE now? Are we going to get a nice...
No, I'm just
Steady
telling
on.
everyone, there's my hairdresser on the, which one's
Steady
that?
on.
The monument, is that the monument or is it
I don't know.
the paper
The
cross?
Illuminati structure in the Phoenix Park.
I thought it was Frida Kahlo. What is that? I don't know what
That's
that is.
Marco. Do you remember Marco? Remember he was on the show, you might have been on, do you remember talking about Black Lives Matter?
He's always
Oh.
he's always in the thumbnail for the post up on the broadsheet site.
Yes,
Yeah,
something.
we were going to bring him on last week, but then we didn't go ahead.
I've sent a memo about that to head office, by the way. But anyway, so,
You should make a formal complaint.
I think I will in writing, in triplicate.
Anyway, sorry, moving on.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I got to ask you. Yeah, we don't dwell on it too much, but Claire Byrne Live was, of course, in the news this week for the wrong reasons when they did their show Outside the Matter and were interviewing frontline workers and all the rest, and there was backlash because just some people said it was, what's the word you would use? Sensationalizing the story now. But I'm just kind of wondering, because we're in lockdown number 3, and like all good sequels, the third one is never anywhere near as the good one, first one.
Nowhere near, no. They changed directors. It was a bad idea.
Every time the messaging is, you turn the Late Late Show, whether it's Paul Reed or whether it's Houlihan or whoever it is, it's the same messaging about what we need to do. And, we've got this incredibly large numbers. You have the Claire Byrne show, and I know in media people get tested and all the rest, but the optics of seeing people with no masks chatting outside the hospital and all the rest didn't really look good. For me, it didn't seem to be the right thing. But where are your heads at? I mean, we haven't spoken on the show for quite some time, and Sharon, you're joining us for the first time tonight. Where are your heads at the moment?
Prepared to be very depressed, Sharon, because because I just spoke to some friends. I'm going to jump in straight away here because this is my bailiwick right here.
Yeah, here he is, the Mr. Misery.
Fucking the maestro of misery right here. But it's like, I was just talking to a friend in the arts, and he's just come to the conclusion this week. I came to this conclusion March the 14th, I think, last year. This is a long-term deal. This is a decade of misery we're looking at. You know what I mean? That's what's happening. And this is copper fast. Yes. Think about it. The WHO came out yesterday saying that none of the vaccines have surpassed 50% efficacy, right? And also they don't guarantee herd immunity, whatever the hell that is, right? None of the vaccines, the Moderna, the AstraZeneca, there's 5, I think now, right? None of them actually cure COVID. So they're not actually vaccines at all. Also, we fucked up the rollout. If you want it or not, it's not even.
But lads had to get their picture taken with the fridges. Come on.
I don't even.
I'll pick you on one thing, Jimmy. I'll just pick you on one thing. We don't know yet whether they prevent transmission. And there was a statement from Pfizer this week that said there's evidence to show that may be a possibility. But so it's not confirmed at this point. But I think the main thing about it, from as an unqualified, as someone who mostly dabbles in comedy, going to mansplain it to you now, because you don't suffer the symptoms in any severity, so you essentially become asymptomatic. So the window of transmission reduces. So in essence, you're not really spreading it to the same degree. But we would still have that requirement to wear masks and socially distance. So for the likes of myself and yourself in the entertainment industry,
it's over, my friend. But
yeah.
But there's far bigger. Now I don't want to turn into Mr. Conspiracy Theorist here, but I have.
Well, listen. You haven't a hope of even making an indent there. Bodger has got completely into John Ryan. It went bananas there.
I love all that, but I'm reading as we speak. I'm reading Klaus Schwab's book, right? And I will send you a PDF copy of it if you want. Vanessa, you're a woman involved in finance. You know what's going on. So I'll send you this. And it's called The Great Reset. And it's been edited in June of 2020. And it's very, very, very interesting that what is going on behind what's going on with COVID, right? COVID is happening. There's no doubt about that. There's a lot of inconsistencies everywhere that makes for good conspiracy theorizing, right? Clearly. But there is something else going on behind it, and we see this now. This economic reset is happening.
Yeah.
It's clearly happening, and it has to happen. Just empirically, it's like I'm fucked. I am like, destroyed financially. Not that I was ever wealthy, and I don't see anything in the very near future or in the next few years that's going to change for the likes of us, Neil. Right? Getting out to play in front of people, working in front of people, communicating in that way. It'll have to be it'll be a new thing, whatever the hell that is. But what's actually happening financially is the thing that I'm most worried about, what is going on there. And if you read the book, which I suggest everybody does, the book in itself is not sinister or anything. It's not like Mein Kampf or anything. It's not a manifesto of misery, but it's a manifesto of sorts. It's a great reset of the world economy. And they're talking about it in Davos, I think, this month. These people, I don't know who they are. Bono, Bill Gates.
Well, I suppose they have their private jets bringing them out.
Daniel O'Donnell, perhaps. I don't know who meets in Davos and why they should have a profound effect on how much money I've got to spend on cigars this week.
But so maybe you might be answering the question for me. I think that I'm curious about, because when we were in the second lockdown 2.0, the rates didn't drop to the level that NFIT wanted to get before they reopened things. And I think when we spoke last year, I was saying about the concept of fear, that people just weren't afraid anymore. Now that we're in lockdown 3 and we're seeing rates that, NFIT's worst case, I think if, Vanessa, you're the accountant here, when it comes to modeling and statistics, NFIT probably would not be hired by you, given they have never, either side of the scale got it anywhere right. But even their worst case scenarios weren't to the degree of what we're seeing now. Do you think, to all the panelists, have you a greater sense of fear during this lockdown than last year, or was my perception that we weren't afraid anymore?
Did Angela Merkel not terrify you the other day? I mean, she's terrified at the best of times, but she came out and said...
the rates are huge.
Did you hear what she said? She said that we're going to get a more severe lockdown because look what's happening in Ireland. That's what she said. That's a pretty terrifying thing, I think.
Yeah, but see, I don't think Angela realises how fucking stupid our crowd are when it comes to getting this done.
Don't be doing me on Ireland.
No, and I'm going to be very critical here, because we brought the show back last March or April, was it? And this has been a constant theme since this. The answer, there has been no exit strategy to manage this pandemic. Whether it was going to be 6 months lockdown or 9 months lockdown or a year lockdown, there's still no plan. There is still no exit strategy. Their response to dealing with this, whether the numbers are going up or down, is lockdown. And okay, if that's how you manage the pandemic, that's how you manage it. But now you see they're buying vaccines and the fridge is done and they have this. They can now sincerely keep us locked down while they try and figure out a plan as to how to get us vaccinated.
Well, are you looking at... Are you watching?
They're collecting 6-figure benchmarked
don't tell me that.
Incremental salaries,
Yeah.
still trying to figure out how to get vaccines off a cargo flight or a truck and into a hospital or an army centre.
I know a fella in Navan could do that really cheap. But listen, don't worry about that.
But it's not even that. But you see, they're going to keep this locked down until they figure out a way on how they're rolling out the vaccine.
Well, that's what they're doing.
And here's
but that's what they're doing. But at the moment, you've Breed Smith, hold on, you've Breed Smith and you've Richard Boyd Barrett talking about zero COVID strategy. They have at least got a strategy, right, which involves a total lockdown, which is going to happen. We're locked down now till April, I'd say, right?
Yes, but you see that now brings us to what the first lockdown was 13th of March.
13th of March, yeah.
3rd was the kids, whatever day the kids were done their midterm break, right? Or whatever it was, but for Paddy's Day anyway, yeah? Mm-hmm. So that they introduced that lockdown. That's when they introduced it. And they still haven't figured out how to manage it. 16 more beds in ICU is all this crowd have managed.
That's been
and like you were talking about the commission, the report they launched today, right? That was in Sapone's hands for the third term, and she was acting during the first phase of this pandemic. She was an acting minister. So was Regina Doherty. Like
no senator, of course.
No sense of urgency or even giving a shit about the rest of us or how this country. You actually have a situation at the moment, right, where this country can borrow money internationally at negative interest rates. But no, that's not what they're going to do. They're going to build social housing out of these special purpose vehicles and give Pat Cox and all the boys an extra few bob. Like there's the sheer self-interest and self-serving that's going on. Like we're kind of laughing at Golfgate now, but they're the ones laughing at us.
Mm.
They are simply not amongst us. This commission report demonstrates that they have absolutely no idea what life is like on the street.
We discussed this earlier. You brought up the apartheid idea. It's
apartheid, right?
But
now, I used to always use the regulatory apartheid. How
I have a better term for
central bank regulates, say, Bank of Ireland versus the credit union here, right?
Yep.
Oh, I did always use the regulatory apartheid, but I am telling you now, at every inch of this country's apparatus. Apparatus.
I like it. Okay.
There is apartheid.
Well,
whether you have to get your child christened to start in school.
It's reality bifurcation. This is what it is. It's like it's almost like that. It's almost Heisenberg. It's almost it's quantum physics. Where there are all sorts of realities, and we're living in different realities. My reality is very different to Micheál Martin's reality.
Yeah. They've got no interest in
and the Twain never did. No, none whatsoever. None whatsoever.
If they had any interest in actually how this affects Neil or myself or Jimmy or Sharon, I'm assuming we're all sole traders, self-employed, hand to mouth, week to week. Right?
Well, by the way, according to Klaus Schwab, we're fucked. It's like, forget about it. SMEs, get rid of all those guys. Self-employed, get rid of them. You know what I mean?
Okay. Well, we saw that. We see this in all the big stores. They're the ones reopening. But actually, that brings me to another conspiracy. But anyway. But they had never had any interest in managing this for the Irish people. If they had, creches would have been open. They'd have figured out a way to get creches open so people could work, right? They would have figured out to get the leaving cert done. There was nothing to do with an algorithm just to get the leaving cert sat. It was a ruler. Measuring out 2 meters, sent everyone else home, just keep the leaving certs in school. They never figured that out. Okay? And now we're here again. And the answer is lockdown. And we are going to be locked down until they get their act together and figure out a way of issuing a vaccine. They put this lockdown on us on our streets, but there's no problem. There was no lockdown out in Dublin Airport.
Never has been.
If this was foot and mouth, that would have been locked down. And if it was given to the Department of Ag from day one, so we'd have been all tested.
So serious you're saying it twice.
It's worth repeating.
You know what that is? I think Kevin has a second unit open, has he?
He does. I will knock down. If you're here, Kevin, if you put yourself on mute there. Now there you go. The awkwardness of live TV.
Total chaos. It's fantastic.
Well, now that Statler and Waldorf have had their say there between Jimmy and Vanessa.
Whoa! No need for that.
Sharon, is someone new to the show and hasn't had the joy of sharing and ranting on the air.
But I tell you one thing: how is it the COVID never fucking hit Terry Prone?
Vanessa, I'll be muting you now. I'll be muting you now, Vanessa.
Illuminati, that's it. The Illuminati, that's why.
How's your head holding up, Sharon? During
it's not that bad, to be honest. Things haven't changed that much for me. I work from home anyway. Quite solitary. I'm working on a documentary at the moment. The first day we shot on set was the 14th of March. We've gone to huge expense to build this amazing set, And the first day we used it, there was the first lockdown. But now we're considered to be essential workers. So, you know, we can go out, we can film. So it hasn't been too bad. It's just what's coming next. You know, it's like we were saying, like, we have to do things so differently now. And when it comes to things like documentaries, you go out, you interview people. A lot of the people that I need to interview are elderly. So we can't go near them. So, I mean, I'm worried about what I'll be doing when this particular project is over, you know. Maybe I'll start writing books, more books, and not self-publish them, you know. I don't know, like something I can do from home and not have to travel. But I mean, my head is kind of staying together okay, because it hasn't, like, my day-to-day thing hasn't changed that much.
Well, that's a positive response. And it's like, you know, I think the mental health thing, we discussed this, it's enormous. It's enormous, and it's getting bigger all the time, and we're seeing it now. I'm experiencing it myself. I get a little bit of the old black dog from time to time. So, you know, I run every day, I do weights, I do whatever, but it is quite a depressing scenario. This is the third lockdown. It's very difficult. I'm finding it very difficult just to maintain some sort of positive outlook about the future. The future is so vague, and good governance would really help. Just let us know what's going on, or give us an idea what your plan is. That would be nice. You know, my wife works in a restaurant. I was talking to the restaurant owner today. She's talking about closing down 4 restaurants forever. She's just because if they'd have told us the last time that we'd only be open for 18 days, she said I wouldn't have opened, for starters, right? So stuff like that. It's just, and that's only a very small. It's a big thing for her, obviously. It's only a very small view into people's lives. How good government would help. Good governance would really help. Just tell us what the fuck's going on. Stephen Donnelly is an appalling Minister for Health. Just the lack of communication is just appalling. And him arguing with the County Court. Well, what is going on? Seriously, you know? Does anybody know what's going on?
No, I think we can agree that nobody knows what's going on. But we've got a couple of minutes left, and we have to end on a high, because look, Vanessa's year is off to a bad start. Jimmy is high. Jimmy's been listening to the Morrissey album since the start of the year. We have to go now.
I think,
and we've got an ideal person on the panel now tonight, in Sharon, someone from the entertainment industry.
But sure, what did the 2E turn G Entertainment?
Sure, look, we're look at us.
We're unemployed. Yeah, we're ex-entertainment industry people. Yes,
watching reruns of Dallas is what we've resorted to.
JR was a great character.
What's getting you through it? What are you watching?
I just finished watching Tin Star. The one set in Liverpool, because I love
Tim Roth's great there. I haven't seen the new one, but
he's fantastic. And I love Genevieve O'Reilly. I'm actually starting to work on a feature script about Rosemary Smith.
The rally driver.
Yeah,
cool.
She's an incredible woman. I mean, just an amazing career, but also a very interesting personal life. And she's a good pal, and she's great fun and everything. So of course I'm jumping ahead and thinking about, you know, casting, and this actress Genevieve O'Reilly, I just think, you know, she doesn't look like Rosemary as such, but there's just something about her. And of course she was born here, grew up in Australia, so you know, I'm a fan of hers, so just interesting to see her. And what else? The usual: Schitt's Creek, Modern Family, Anything to Make Me Laugh, Arrested Development. They're all the things, but then I'll come across the odd kind of murder documentary.
You like the murder documentary?
Yeah.
Have you seen? I just watched it last night, The Professor and the Madman with Mel Gibson and Sean.
I told you about that.
Did you tell me, Vanessa?
Yeah.
Well, now
there's
a couple of caveats. I mean, Mel Gibson does this teary man thing very well, you know, and it's like, okay, stop with the crying already, Mel. That's 12 times in 8 minutes or something, but and also the Scottish accent. That's me. He's become a professional Scot. I think he might have been born in Scotland and emigrated.
Sean Penn.
And then Sean Penn. Also, his accent. He's an American Confederate colonel who's been traumatized, PTSD, and comes over to England, commits murder. Anyway, so, but it's a bit like that the Queen's Gambit thing. It's like, I love words and I love chess, so I love a script that doesn't insult me straight away. That's always a good start. you know. And this was really good, a really excellent performance from both of them. Sean Penn's, very hard to make out what he was saying because he plays a lunatic, you know, but very good, great acting from both of them, great script.
Yeah, the guy that made Black 47, Mark Tarek, he made that movie.
Did he?
It's just shows now, lads.
I do, Vanessa, occasionally, once in a while.
Oh, great. Well,
Vanessa, what have you been watching?
I watched Bridgerton.
Did you?
Oh, yeah.
I did,
Lads, here, no, just no.
One
Too
thing
much, wait to watch Riding for starters.
well, can I just do you know what?
I watched the narrative.
It's the same, literally the same scene the whole time. All the writing, it's like
just too much. I said to Jenny, I said I can't anymore with the writing. After 2 hours, I was done.
There's only 2 episodes with loads of that.
Oh, that's not. No,
but over Christmas I watched loads of television. It was great, but I watched Bridgerton. It's probably 2 episodes too long, but it's escapism. It's fun. It's well made. Definitely well made.
Stylish.
So
also very revisionist, I thought.
Well, probably, yeah.
What is this obsession with the British filmmakers of having people of color and Chinese people and like a Benetton ad every time, but it's set in the 1700s or something? It's like that doesn't make any sense.
Oddly enough,
the Queen was black. The Queen was black.
Well, that's how they introduced why there was black in what you call this upper class.
Hold on. The Habsburgs, those Huns, they wouldn't have anything to do with a black person.
No, but it's introduced, and it doesn't really get enough time. But it's slipped in a 10-word line. It slipped in about it was because the king, who was mad, Mad
King George,
fell in love with the black woman, and so she's the queen, and that's how it was acceptable then for the
possibly historic poetic license there, maybe. What do you think?
But that's how they did it, and but it's in one way it's neither here nor there because you're not distracted by it at all. It's actually all the bullshit. They're dancing every night, and the big hairs and the big frocks and the whole nonsense of the walks and the carriages and you know what I mean. That's what you're watching this crap for. Do you know what I mean?
Fair enough.
So, but I did, and just watch. It's and look at it's probably as I say 2 episodes long. But do you know what? It's Telly, like it's Telly. That's all you want it to be. But there was 2 things I wanted to bring up with you. Right? Do you remember a while back I promoted a show called Mozart in the Jungle? It's about the New York Symphony, and they have this mad maverick maestro comes in, and the show, it's 3 seasons. It's on the
what's it called? Mozart on Amazon Prime.
Mozart in the Jungle.
I'll have to check that out because
I'm
always very suspicious of that.
And it's only about 20-25 minutes. So the music it is all classical, but it is good, and the performances are just fantastic.
Hold on. It's all classical, but it is good. What is this kind of
no.
musical elitism?
It's not just the music. It's good. I'm talking about the performances between the characters in it that are sat in between the real musicians, But it is the New York Symphony, and Roddy Down plays the ex-maestro, and he's for me it's his best part ever, actually. But can I just say I watched it again over Christmas, and I learned it was Pandicam for the brain. Mozart in the Jungle. That's what I would say. Pandicam for the brain. That's what it is. It was so much fun. But something really weird. Well, it was weird for me because I like movies with fellas boxing the head off each other and taking off their shirts and blowing things up, right? But there was a show came up on the Amazon called The Florida Project, and it's basically William Dafoe is managing
it's
a
brilliant.
motel. You tell them about it because I won't do it any justice at all.
No, you will. I can barely remember it. I can't even remember where I watched it, and I've been looking for it ever since.
Yeah, it's on the Amazon Prime.
Are you sure? I'm taking notes now. Florida Project.
The Florida Project. Dafoe is managing this motel in Orlando, and it's sort of like the cheap beds in Orlando on the outskirts of the big hotels, and then that are on the outskirts of the Disneyland and universal compounds. So it's kind of the real. But in these motels, there are people who live there all the time. And there's this single mother and her daughter, and the little girl, her name is Mooney, and she's just out of this world. And mother has problems, and they have friends in there. And this is how the community develops and what the kids. So basically, the project is it follows these kids in this setting. Now, of course, it's so totally scripted now, but they follow the kids in this setting for their summer holidays. And it's the whole film is through the kids' eyes. And Defoe is fantastic in it, but it is, I'm just going to say, the Florida Project. And
Okay.
might be a bit gritty, might be a bit hard, might be a bit annoying because there's a lot of kids, there's a lot of dialogue from kids in it. But my God, it's just, when it comes to the end, that last scene, my God, it would just.
No spoilers now.
No
spoilers, no
Out.
spoilers.
Oh,
The
and do you know what
shitstorm.
happens? Do you know what started tonight? I'm telling you, lads, this is the TV event of the year. Perfect Pooch. It's like, it's the Bake Off.
Vanessa,
dog groomers.
Vanessa, please, Vanessa, stop. Stop.
It's the
Stop
it
already.
is the TV event. Sheridan Smith is the host. Sheridan Smith is like the new
Mary Berry.
No, see, they're judges, very different now. It's like they're
Oh.
sort of this new Noel Fielding and Sandy Toksvig.
And do you know what? Before we go,
I made notes tonight. Like, are you
I
giving
could
out
tell you,
tonight?
none of that is going to top the news I have for you, Vanessa.
Well, tell me.
Despite Hollywood drying up and no movies coming out, and despite the failure of Christopher Nolan with Tenet, the film we thought that was going to
Tennis,
so much-
Jesus, that's 2 hours I won't get back. Jesus
And-
Christ.
and Cobra Kai,
You
I binge
laughing
watched
at Pooch.
Cobra Kai, but nothing excited me as much as finding out this week they're bringing back Sex in the City, although without Samantha, but it's coming back.
Kill me now, kill me now, kill me now.
Lockdown is saved. Lockdown is saved.
Any word on June, by the way? Any word on June, Neil?
June. Which June?
Frank
June.
Herbert's June.
Dune. There's a bit of argy-bargy between the director Villeneuve and the studio because of their plans to release it both digitally and in the cinema. But I think it's pushed out to next Christmas, I think.
Ah, really?
Or maybe it's the summer, but it's there's a lot of movies that have been pushed out. The only, and you might correct me here if I'm wrong, Sharon, it feels like from a big studio perspective, Disney is the only one that's churning out stuff and has their schedule between their Marvel movies and their Star Wars spin-offs.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's the schedules are quite dry. And I certainly know from my friends in LA in terms of filming, it's I think we talked about that before, like that TV shows have been cancelled, even popular ones. The what's the name of it now? The Women of Wrestling, what was it called?
Oh,
Glow, yes.
Yeah. Oh, it was great.
That was cancelled.
What's it called? What's it called?
Glow. GLOW.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
But isn't that a thing? Isn't that a thing with Netflix and people like that? When they get 3 seasons, they stop, they cancel it, no matter how
But
successful
it was
is.
just unfeasible to film. I mean, if you look, like Grey's Anatomy is still going because they've said it, so in order for them to keep filming, they can wear masks and all the rest, and coronavirus is in the show. But a show like Glow, where they're wrestlers and they're physically on top of each other in it just wasn't feasible. So
Well, I've got a bit of news which may not mean a great deal to any of you, but it's something which interests me. While I was locked out with my super internet connection, like living in the bog does have some advantages, like you can really be locked down.
Yeah.
Into our network mailbox came an email. Now, I know what the email's from, and I know what it's about, but I haven't read it yet. But it came from a guy, it has come from a guy who, oddly enough, many years ago, and I mean many years ago, used to be a roomie of mine. And he spent 40 years, just over 40 years in RTE. And this man, when I knew him, was apparently one of those who were going to storm the barricades. Except when we took off and looked around, we found he was never there. I mean, I went to his father's funeral as long ago as 1976. That will tell you. And among the people in the graveyard around it were people like Eamon Gilmore and a number of other people whom you would possibly know. But anyway, this guy, whose name shouldn't be a surprise, spent 18 years as RTE's religious and social affairs correspondent.
Patsy McGarry.
His name's Joe Little.
Oh, yeah. That's before Patsy McGarry. Yeah, that's okay.
Patsy's not working for RTE, is he?
No,
No.
he's
No, Patsy's still with the Irish Times.
Oh,
But anyway,
they all look the same to me.
Patsy went for a job in RTE about 1979 or 1980, and they didn't like the look of him, and he never got it. And he never went back.
too
But
Catholic for him, I think.
leaving that aside, Joe, who when I knew him was definitely one of the coming men of the revolution, and we were both sabbatical officers in UCD. He was education officer in the mid 70s, and I was the deputy pres a year or so after him. But I even holidayed with him at his father's old fishing lodge, Shanramona Lodge, up in the wilds of Mayo. His grandfather was the late Circuit Court Judge Barrow Breen, who also served as a time between Greeks and Turks as an acceptable Supreme Court as the Chief Justice of Cyprus. He also wrote the heavy gang report for the government in the in the mid 70s. The interesting thing was that Barrow Breen wrote something. He was put into his hands as a safe man, except Barrow Breen, being the man he was, wrote the report on the evidence he had. And he lived out in just beyond Enniskerry, and in a big old house where, oddly enough, a friend of mine now lives and has done for a number of years. And the 44 bus used to come past Belfield. And I flagged it down one day and hopped up and went upstairs, and there was Judge Barrow Breen after the release of his report. So I sat down beside him, and he knew me, and we chatted. And he says, "Do you know, when I completed my report, I sent it to the government. And then after a while, they bound it beautifully and made it available through government publications." And he says, "Do you know what? They never sent me a copy. I had to go and buy one myself." And this pillar of the societies said to me, "You're a friend of Joe's, are you?" I said, "Yeah, I'm a good friend of Joe's. We've roomed together and we've done all sorts of things together," which we did. And he says, "How well do you know Joe?" I said, "I know him extremely well." He says, "You do know Joe's very religious, don't you?" I said, "It hadn't really occurred to me, but thereafter, it did occur to me." And on the 1st of June, 2017, when Zapone vomited out all of the bullshit that was to delay things for another 3.5 years and maybe longer, Joe was down on the plinth to organize to interview Zapone. And seeing this, I sprinted out, and all the usual suspects were there, including Catherine O'Halloran holding up her iPhone to record what the minister was saying. And Joe, piece to camera, was interviewing Zapone, and she says, "Oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and the Attorney General is going to bring forward legislation to allow for exhumation." And of course, Joe Soap here, amidst all the fucking journals, has to build up, "You can't do that, Minister. You're usurping the role of the coroner." And there's all this thing, and fucking ushers start appearing, and Catherine Hammond says, no, leave me alone. Shut up, you know. And then Joe says to his cameraman, "Could you just break that?" He said, "Minister, if we take that again," he turns around and gives me a filthy look, you know. So I am so looking forward to Joe's take on the report. Sorry for the long-winded, but
No, but is Joe retiring?
it's coming. Oh, he's retired, yeah. I've never even heard of this fucking thing. It's his piece in, quote, the National Catholic Reporter. Now, I've never heard of this before.
I think I cancelled my subscription years ago to that.
No, I mean, I know the Irish Catholic. I know all the usual suspects, but I've never ever come across this before. So my bedtime reading with my my cocoa tonight is my old mucker Joe Little's take from the National Catholic Reporter. I just thought I'd leave that with you for what.
Well, there's
To know
no.
for the crack, would you send us a copy of the Irish Catholic Reporter? And let me...
Vanessa's going to do a reading of it on Saturday night on the website.
No.
There's no time for bedtime reading for me tonight. It'll be straight to bed. We're gonna wrap up there, I think, because we've gone on way longer than anyone ever watches. So on that note, I just want to thank all of our panelists tonight. A big special shout out to our special guests, Sharon Lawless and Kevin Higgins. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll save up for you, Kevin, and get you a better internet. And of course, Our Lady in Crumlin.
Sorry, Dave. We'll get him a better broadband rollout. 4 billion. 4 billion.
Will fix me up.
And Vanessa, Our Lady in Crumlin. I forgot what your nickname is. And of course, our man in the north side, Jimmy Smith. Thanks to all our panelists. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully, when we're back next week, Vanessa will be a lot happier. That'll be nice. We get happy Vanessa.
No.
It's between yourself and Jimmy. I ran out of paper writing down the names of all the people you were giving out about. I don't know, there'll be so many court cases tomorrow. We'll get to keep tracking.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll put everyone in good humor. Telly event of the year. You're going to love this, Kevin, right? Telly event of the year. It's on the BBC, right?
What?
It's called Perfect Pooch.
Hold on. You did this. You just repeated it.
Tell it, Kevin.
No, I heard it.
Oh, did you? Right. Just Telly event of the year. Perfect.
That's why you dropped.
And I can tell now, Kevin will be glued to that. I can just tell.
Having suffered two series of The Mandalorian, I'm not going to listen to.
You see, that's all that superhero shit. I tell you, stay away from all that crap. It's rubbish.
Good night, audience.
Good night, folks.
Good night, everyone.